Welcome to Bamadzajig Ganonindwa. This podcast is produced by the Communications Department at the Anishinaabeg Nation. We will be focusing on the issues and initiatives in Anishinaabeg Nation territory. I'm your host, Lisa Abel. The Kinomaage-Waapkong are one of the largest concentrations of petroglyphs in Canada. The Anishinaabemowin name, Kinomaage-Waapkong, means the teaching rocks. These petroglyphs are located in traditional Mississauga territory at the southern edge of the Canadian Shield, around 50 kilometers east of Curve Lake First Nation and north of Upper Stony Lake. Tucked away in the forest, under a thick layer of moss, the Kinomaage-Waapkong features hundreds of symbols carved into an unusual white marble outcropping. A gap in the crystalline limestone is said to have been the site of the trickling waters of an underground stream. These petroglyphs are believed to have been carved between 600 and 1100 years ago. Mississauga oral histories speak to their people being in the area for millennia, and they identify as descendants of the ancient peoples who lived in Ontario during what is known as the Archaic and Paleo-Indian periods. The Kinomaage-Waapkong are considered a sacred spiritual place, a place of healing, a place of prayer, energy, and power. As stewards and caretakers of the land and waters since time immemorial, the Mississauga people visited the Kinomaage-Waapkong for generations. Around 300 petroglyphs are clearly visible at the main site today. More exist in the surrounding areas, but either remain hidden or have faded over time. On the surface, the rock carvings are of animal and human forms, canoes, and other items of material culture, as well as abstract symbols and shapes arranged around the natural fissures of the rock itself. To Anishinaabe, the meaning of the carvings themselves are deeply related to complex Anishinaabe understandings of the natural world and the spirit world. Knowledge keepers see the symbols of our clan systems, teachings specific to women and men, creation stories, and stories of Wenabajo. The petroglyphs speak to our ceremonial practices and our responsibilities to each other and to all of creation. Kinomaage-Waapkong is evidence of our Anishinaabe history, spiritual and cultural experience. The petroglyphs remain part of Anishinaabe oral tradition and spiritual practice, even as Mississauga were forced to sign treaties, were prevented from exercising their hunting and fishing rights, and were displaced and confined to reserves. Mississauga told the Indian agents they were going elsewhere and continued to visit Kinomaage-Waapkong in secret, then covered the rocks up with the moss before they left to keep them out of sight. As logging, farming, and mining changed the lands and waters all around the indigenous peoples in the area, the Kinomaage-Waapkong were discovered by settlers. It's said that a local historian, Charles Kingham, stumbled upon the petroglyphs in 1924, but his findings were not publicized. 30 years later, a team of geological surveyors from a nearby Nephilim mine uncovered the carvings in May 1954. From this point forward, the Kinomaage-Waapkong were no longer a private sacred site visited by Mississauga. For a time, the teaching rocks became the purvey of newspapermen, amateur historians, academic anthropologists and archaeologists, and provincial government officials seeking to bolster local tourism and an awareness of what they referred to as a pre-contact Algonquian Indian culture. Ontario established Petroglyphs Provincial Park in 1976. To protect the carvings from further erosion, a large protective building was constructed in the mid-1980s that sealed off the entire Kinomaage-Waapkong from the surrounding environment. A visitor center was built in 1988. It took many years until Indigenous people regained a say over the interpretation and management of the Kinomaage-Waapkong. A formal collaboration between Curve Lake First Nation and Ontario Parks was established in the early 1990s. A steering committee that included members from Curve Lake, artists, elders, and knowledge keepers developed the content for the interpretive center named The Learning Place, which opened in 2002. Despite the existing co-management relationship between Petroglyphs Provincial Park and Curve Lake First Nation, this partnership is limited. Curve Lake has a role in gatekeeping, staffing the Welcome Center, and educating visitors about the Teaching Rocks, but hasn't had a say in larger decisions about the site. Curve Lake First Nation is now seeking to become the primary caretakers of K'inamage Wapkong, encompassing both the park and its sacred sites. In June 2025, the Anishinaabeg Nation Chiefs in Assembly passed a resolution supporting Curve Lake First Nation's efforts to explore strategies for co-management or primary responsibility for managing the park. This fall, I met with Keith Knott to talk about the petroglyphs a few months after he had completed his most recent term as Chief of Curve Lake. Chief Knott has been involved with his home community for over 60 years as an employee, committee representative, councillor, and chief. He is a prominent figure in the Peterborough area as a champion of First Nation people and an active volunteer in community projects. Chief Knott noted with pride the many changes he has seen in Curve Lake over his lifetime. New housing, successful land claims, a new health center with a family health team, a small business center, and a non-denominational church. Curve Lake is busy with the construction of a new water treatment and distribution system, sports and recreation facilities, and a commercial aquaponics project. I sat down with Chief Knott at the Curve Lake Band Office. Miigwech, Chief Knott, for being with us today on B'Madsaji Ganonindwa. Miigwech for welcoming me here to your home community of Curve Lake. So Miigwech for meeting with me today.
Miigwech gaking commission say sema. You can commission. We can distribute see oh so onaka. Gawaj gigit say up chichkan mayama. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you today. But, it's a pleasure and an honor to be approached and asked to be involved in a situation like this. And if my voice can help in any which way, bringing a message across or whatever, I get inspired by those type of things that if whatever I say is an inspiration for anything or for others, then I think that's my purpose, is to share what I know and the knowledge that I have of various things. And I really appreciate that opportunity to do that.
Miigwech, I'm so glad to be here with you. To start, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little or as much about yourself as you'd like?
How much time we got?
I got all day.
Well, first off, I'll start off with my spirit name. Nigan Kabwinders Nikkas, Mokwa, Makisendora, Arshkigmong Nonjaba. Translate that in the foreign language is that my spirit name is one who stands in front. My clan is the bear and the eagle, and I'm from Curve Lake, Oshkigamong. That was the first name of Curve Lake, of this community way back in the late 1800s and in the early 1800s. It means the same thing as Curve Lake. I've been involved with my community now for going on 60 years. And I've been on council for 34 years altogether. And I began my 20th year as chief of this community. And there's nothing more that I've enjoyed but representing my community, no matter where I went or what I done. I had two families, my own family, and the larger family was the community. And I treated them both the same. I was there for both my own family and the family of my community. And I think that's what kept me moving all the time, the affection that I've had for both. And it has been a joy and the respect that I've received from the community of my involvement here for many years. And also I've been acknowledged from various things. I'm also a member of the Order of Canada. I've also received an honorary doctorate degree of law from Trent University. I've also received a pen from the International Rotary Club, and I've received acknowledgement from the city of Peterborough, the county of Peterborough, and the surrounding townships. Lifetime Achievement Award from the Anishinaabe Nation. I could go on those acknowledgments, but it's nice to receive those acknowledgments, but I cannot receive them without acknowledging the staff, council members, and community. Not just only one individual does and achieve all those things. It is done collectively, and I make sure that they are noted whenever I identify or recognize these acknowledgments that I've received. And I've met princes, I've met prime ministers, governor generals, lieutenant governors. I've met so many people throughout my lifetime, members of parliament. I got along well with the members of parliament, MPs, and that relation building is one of the key elements of moving forward and also achieving our goals that we were after. And working together, we can do these things. And this is why I acknowledge everyone on all these things. One cannot do it all alone. Same as a family. It's difficult to raise a family by yourself, but if you have two, it makes it that much easier. So collectively, you do a better job in raising or developing something, and we move forward on all these things. I was married for almost 62 years, was with my wife for 65 years. This year would have been our 67th anniversary this year. That's why I keep saying I feel so grateful, and joy comes over me when I see people still together, even at around my age and those in their 70s, 80s, still together. And I feel so joy that they're able to share their company together on these things. It's very difficult when one of the partners does move on to the spirit world. I have found it difficult. But it's these memories that you created and the family that we have together, we're able to overcome some of these issues, and it brings life back to you. But enjoy life. Life is too short. Even though I'm getting up years, I'm 89 now, I'm 3 months into my 90th year, so. And that's the feeling you get. You feel so good because you've made it to that plateau already. What's beyond that, I don't know. I'm here now and I made it to 89. And that's encouraging, and that's a milestone, that many people don't reach. Still able to maneuver quite well and do things on my own. Cut my grass and all that stuff, so. And that's what positive thinking does to you. 89 is only a number. It's what you feel like.
You mentioned you've been working with your community for over 60 years, you said? So you've seen a lot of changes in your
I've seen
time.
a lot, and being part of that, is so helpful. And sitting around this table with so many going back many years, the majority have now moved on to the spirit world, that I sat around this table with in my younger years. And those memories, and what they taught you, and you bring that forward to the new ones that are here. You try to show by example. So all of these things that's happened over all these many years, and the changes that has taken place. And I feel so grateful that I've been part of all that stuff all these years. That encompasses all these 60 years that I've been involved with our community. And a number of committees I've been on, various committees, prior to being on council, prior to being a chief and all these things. But being involved with the community is grateful, delightful, when you see how far we have come in the last 50 years, even the last 40 years.
So tell me, let's talk about the Kinomage Wapkong,
Okay.
the petroglyphs, also called, or the teaching rocks.
Mm-hmm.
I guess if you've been involved in the community for that long, can we talk about a story of your knowledge and activities that have
I
happened
can
around
tell
the
as
teaching
much
rocks?
as I am aware of and what I can.
To start then, what are they? What are the Kinomage Wapkong?
Well, the Kinomage Wapkong is what they call the teaching rocks. These are carvings that are displayed on a rock by our ancestors. They're spiritual rocks. You go inside that enclosure, you'll see all the symbols that are there. And as I always say, and I think that was their way of communicating way back in the day also. Just like you texting today. Well, not so much the telephone, but the texting. Because you look too up on Lake Superior, you'll see the petroglyphs up there. You come down here, the petroglyphs. You go up to Bon Echo, up that way. You see some more another petroglyphs up there. And where are they all situated? By the water. The water was our highway way back in the day. They traveled by canoe. And my interpretation of all this is that those who put those symbols on the rock gave the message for those who are going by of what's there and what their vision might have been and what they might have experienced in those particular areas as they walk through. You see a bunch with animals and various things. Was that a very good area for food supply, Because each one of those drawings, whether it's carving on the rocks or the paintings on the rocks, it's a message for those who are going by. This is what I've seen, this is what's here. Because we lived off the land all the time. And what a way to communicate with others is by that. And I strongly feel that was their way of communicating, just like your Rogers communication. And this was our way of communicating for our people, the Anishinaabe.
How do we understand the petroglyphs as a spiritual site?
Maybe not everyone will get the same experience or the same feelings. One has to experience them themselves when they go there. And when you look at what is there, you can either feel or visualize of the ancestors who put them there. It's pretty hard to describe one's feelings or one's interpretation on how they feel when they approach something. Just like you go somewhere, you don't expect anything, then all of a sudden excitement approaches one. You don't get that feeling until you may not experience the same as somebody else does. But just to see what is there, and you look and visualize those who walked by that area, those who had, whether a vision they had or what they saw, and they put it down for somebody else to come by and see what they saw and experience what they experienced. And I think that's some of the feelings that you can get when you're there. It's like a relationship, the feeling that you get when you're close to someone, a different feeling than you would have with somebody else who's you're not close to. One individual's feelings are different than someone else's. Yours may be different than mine. You may look at these drawings that are there and just see them as drawings. Won't mean anything. But if you look at them and you know that they just didn't appear there, they've been put there by someone, and you feel the someone's presence while you're there.
Is it like a connection to our long ago ancestors who were also on this land?
I can't very well describe whether the connection is there from our ancestors, but you got to feel that connection. You yourself have to feel that connection. And when you see these, how did they get there? If you look at them long enough, that thing seems to uplift you or give you the energy that one is needed, I think, sometimes. Perhaps I don't like to use this other way, is that going to church, you get a different feeling a church is a church. But once you walk through that door, you see all the stained glass and all that stuff. You get a different view, a different vision, a different feeling when you walk in those doors. And this is something I think you could look at more similarly, the feeling you get when you walk in there. Some may get the feeling as they're walking up towards the building, but you won't experience it until you walk through the door.
Then in noting that it's similar to a church, then are you saying it's similar in a sacred way, like as a sacred space?
It is a sacred space. It is done there by our example. Maybe that's like the Creator created everything. The petroglyphs was created by our ancestors to bring and deliver a message to those who went by that particular area prior to the protection that it had received. It could be generations upon generations before that place was visited again after that. I can't say it's true or it's not true, but that's what I think. After the ancestors done those, there could be a gap of time when nobody went by that place again. That's why they were covered up. And what better way the Creator thought of protecting them, by protecting them with the moss to keep them well protected with the natural environment that was there.
Do we have a sense of how old they might be?
I don't know. I can't give you the number of years, but I think it has been determined roughly. There may be a record somewhere.
Hundreds? Thousands?
It has to be over hundreds, I would think.
Hundreds of years old. A team of prospectors from a nearby Nephilim mine at Stony Lake uncovered the carvings in May 1954. This time, Nick Nichols, a journalist at the Peterborough Examiner, took interest. A photo of the petroglyphs appeared in the Saturday paper, along with a picture of one of the co-finders seated on the limestone next to the carvings, which Nichols described as prehistoric Indian picture writing. The symbols had been filled in with black charcoal for photographic purposes. An editorial in that same issue of the Examiner called on the Royal Ontario Museum or a university to send archaeologists or, quote, some competent persons to investigate this discovery immediately, noting that what they called recognized relics of early times should be preserved from human depredation. Within a week, archaeologists from the University of Toronto visited the site. Their theories about the origins and authenticity of the petroglyphs made the Canadian press wire service. Curious people started to make day trips from as far away as Toronto, stopping in the town of Lakefield to ask for directions to the site. Nick Nichols contacted 15 Canadian and American universities to gather opinions from the heads of their archaeological and anthropological departments. In June 1954, the Examiner reported that the local MPP had assured him that the Royal Ontario Museum would take action that summer. In 1955, Paul Sweetman's preliminary report on the Peterborough petroglyphs was published in Ontario History, the journal of the Ontario Historical Society. Sweetman and his University of Toronto colleagues set out in the summer of 1954 to provide a complete and scientific record of the site, photographing, measuring, mapping, and describing the glyphs. Plaster casts of the glyphs were taken, which were then sent to the Royal Ontario Museum. The team also carried out excavations to search for village remains. Sweetman wrote that it was urgent to investigate and record the site before it became, quote, a mecca for inquisitive summer tourists who might deface or otherwise disturb the site. He suggested that the site could be fenced in and designated, and thus preserved as an educational and historic site of prime importance. It's unclear in these archival documents whether the mining company, newspaper reporters, or archaeological teams ever approached the local people at Curve Lake First Nation for their opinion or guidance. Yet Chief Knott remembers a time when the Kinomage Wapkong were newly exposed and still part of the surrounding forest.
And it was a prospector, I guess it was, looking around just for various things. Yeah. And they kind of discovered those. They were all covered up. They were all covered up with moss, because somebody had to be digging around there in order to discover them, to find them. But there are some, my understanding, there are some elders from this community and surrounding areas knew and aware that they were there long before the prospector located them. And I know I've been there prior to the enclosure, just after the discovery, and there was still moss covered. They're still covered by moss back in the day.
Was that the first time you saw them?
That's the first time I saw them, yeah.
What was that moment like, the first time you saw them? What did you see?
Well, same as anything else, you're not fully aware or knowledgeable of what this is about. We were there because we heard there were some carvings on the rocks and that. It's a matter of going to see for yourself. Curiosity, I guess.
What year would that have been?
Oh, that might have been in the 50s, 60s, maybe.
Okay.
60s, I'd imagine. Somewhere around there.
I read through some papers and articles that were written about it. So it said in around 1954 or so, it was geologists.
Yeah.
Say they found the carvings. That, as you mentioned, they were hidden underneath.
Yeah, there's about that much moss on top of them, I think.
What, 4 or 5 inches?
There's I would say quite heavily.
Wow.
And not just a little wee skim like that. They're a little heavier. And that was a way of the Creator protecting what was there from the environment that was there. And my understanding, what I've heard also, someone with whether it's black crayon or something, you see some of the images in black. They kind of filled that in just to bring them out. That's not the natural. The black wasn't the natural of it.
So
I didn't see very much of it. I only seen a very small portion, not very big. I didn't go tearing it all up just to see what was there. I was made aware of that. We went and checked to see, and we didn't uncover stuff in order to see what was all there. There was a little fence around it at the time, and
the petroglyphs, which were once difficult to access, were soon opened up for tourism. In the 1950s, the Ontario Department of Lands and Forests developed a 5-kilometer hiking trail to the petroglyphs, and later put up a wire fence around the site. In 1967, a newly built timber access road provided easier access to the petroglyphs by car, and an estimated 20,000 visitors came to the site in 1968. By the early 1970s, this had leveled out to an average of 14,000 people per year. Prompted by concerns that the petroglyphs were at increased risk of vandalism and erosion, and the realization that the petroglyph site was more extensive than originally determined, Trent University anthropologists Joan and Romas Vastokas conducted another study in the summer of 1967, seeking to understand the role and meaning of the glyphs, their age, and the cultural context of the artists. Their book, Sacred Art of the Algonquians, published in 1973, examines the petroglyphs and theorized about the function of the site and meaning of the glyphs, drawing on anthropological research about the culture and worldview of the Algonquians. In 1976, Ontario established Petroglyphs Provincial Park, with the goal of safeguarding and protecting the petroglyphs as a unique and significant provincial and national feature, while allowing it to remain accessible to visitors. As a historical park, it was designated for day-use activities only, such as viewing the petroglyphs, picnicking, fishing, hiking, and scenic driving. The chain-link fence around the carvings was replaced with a boardwalk. Ontario's Petroglyphs Park Management Plan, published in 1977, emphasized the park as an attraction within the recreational Kawartha Lakes tourist area. The park management plan suggested that facilities and programming should establish, quote, a historical feeling and simulate the environment of the former inhabitants, the Indian carvers. The park should provide visitors with a better appreciation for and understanding of this nationally important site through a high-quality educational experience and an interpretive program about the Algonquian-speaking Indian culture, quote. Drawing on previous archaeological and anthropological research, the plan acknowledged that the petroglyphs had a reputation as a religious site, and that the site has and will continue to be considered a sacred, holy place. The planned visitor center would contain an exhibit, a theater, a resource library, and archives, with the aim of making visitors more aware of the history of the glyph site, culture of the Indians who carved the figures, and develop a better understanding of the glyph site before they see it. Further research about the native cultures would be conducted by park staff, ministry staff, the staff of other parks in the area, and academic researchers. Again, Ontario's 1977 Park Management Plan was unclear about engagement with Michisaugig at Curve Lake First Nation regarding the interpretation, access, or management of the petroglyphs.
I think we got more involved with it after that had become a provincial park. It really didn't get all that much attention, I think, until it became a provincial park, until our elders start realizing and understanding what this was all about. And they got and started getting involved with it at that time, I believe, because the provincial government had full control and jurisdiction over them. And then could be a number of Anishinaabeg Nations assemblies that they start talking about the petroglyphs. And I believe that's when they started talking about it, start doing things about it. Because there is a resolution at the Anishinaabeg Nations office giving Curve Lake and recognizing Curve Lake as stewards of the petroglyphs. I believe that's when we started really getting involved with it. Then as things moved forward, we started meeting with the Minister of Natural Resources. Because my first term, I believe, as chief, we start talking about co-management of the park. That would be in the 90s. Then we started meeting with M&R. We done up an agreement where we also began as gatekeepers of petroglyphs, where we would also receive some of the revenues that are being created. After time, Also, the first term that I had, they were able to go in there and hunt deer with a bow hunting. And due to when the elders and that spoke up, we approached M&R at that time to terminate bow hunting within the Petroglyphs area, within that park, due to the fact of the spirituality of the site that is there. And that stopped. At one point in time, you could hear the flow of water beneath those carvings that are there. So there might have been an underground stream, river, or something at that time. Over time, the elders also noticed of the deterioration of the changes that are taking place regarding the environment around that area. And that's when discussions took place regarding the enclosure that is there today to help protect what is there. So that was our goal eventually, to try and become co-manager and have more of a say on the operation and decision making for the site, And that brings to the resolution that was just passed this past June at the Assembly, was to try and head in that direction. More say in operation, more say on the infrastructure and all that stuff that's going on, the hiring and all that stuff, And hopefully, eventually, some point in time, take full control.
The 1980s were a busy time at Petroglyphs Provincial Park. To preserve the petroglyphs from weathering by acid rain, algae, and frost, an entire building was constructed to completely enclose the rock. This tall, 7-sided building, made of steel beams and glass, is a climate-controlled environment, with large windows to allow for natural ventilation and solar heating of the rock to keep it dry, while excluding rain and groundwater runoff. Some carvings were damaged during the construction of the building, and it continues to impact the flow of water underneath the rocks. In a critique of the management of the park, researcher Dagmara Zawadzka writes that the building fails to reflect Indigenous ideas regarding spirituality and sacred locales, where connection with the natural setting is important. It also promotes a static vision of the place. In the late 1980s, Ontario Parks and Curve Lake entered a partnership, starting with an agreement to have Curve Lake First Nation act as the contractors for the park gate. Members of Curve Lake First Nation advocated strongly to regain access for First Nations people to the sacred site for ceremonies, traditional teachings, and spiritual visits. The community continues to have annual solstice ceremonies at Kinomague-Wapkong. Early designs for the visitor center focused on the petroglyphs from an archaeological and anthropological viewpoint. In the mid-1990s, a small steering committee comprising of Ontario Park staff and members of Curve Lake First Nation began collaborating to design the exhibits for the Learning Place, which opened in 2002. They also ensured that Anishinaabemowin was included in the signage, which was previously in English and French only. The Learning Place strives to express the story of the teaching rocks from an Anishinaabe perspective, emphasizing their connection to a living people. Built on a medicine wheel concept, the exhibits wind through the 4 directions like a serpent and have their own displays, photos, videos, and cultural objects. Curve Lake First Nation's role as traditional keepers of the petroglyphs were recognized by the United Anishinaabeg Councils, Anishinaabe elders affiliated with Trent University, and the Anishinaabeg Nation. In 1999, a resolution was passed at the Anishinaabeg Grand Council calling for the Anishinaabeg Nation to affirm and support the continuing role of Curve Lake First Nation with ongoing guidance from traditional Anishinaabe as the keepers of the place where the teaching rocks are located, as a responsibility on behalf of the entire Anishinaabeg Nation. At the June 2025 Anishinaabeg Nation Grand Council Assembly, the Chiefs in Assembly passed Resolution Number 2025-08, supporting Curve Lake First Nation management of the Petroglyphs Provincial Park. The resolution states that from a First Nation perspective, this area is a place of deep cultural and spiritual significance. While government and others have promoted it as an educational opportunity, this sacred site is foremost recognized by First Nation communities as a living cultural landscape and a place of ancestral knowledge. To be effective in their role as the traditional keepers of the Kinomague Wapkong, Curve Lake First Nation feels they must explore strategies for a co-management responsibility or primary responsibility for managing the park. This will better enable Curve Lake First Nation to protect the park and have the authority over how the park is promoted to ensure a healthy atmosphere around the site and deliver sacred teachings in a good way. The resolution also notes that the facilities are degrading and requiring maintenance, with a gap in resources needed to properly maintain both the park and the sacred sites, with more effort put towards it being a tourism destination rather than being preserved for its cultural and environmental significance. The overall goal is for Curve Lake First Nation to exercise full jurisdiction as the primary caretaker of Kinomague Wapkong, or enter into co-management arrangements where Curve Lake will manage the park as well as preserve and protect the sacred sites within the park. Here's some of what Chief Knott said as he tabled the resolution.
This briefing that I'll be given is very dear and important to me. The Teaching Rocks holds profound significance for Anishinaabe First Nations. The sacred site embodies our history, spiritual practices, and cultural teachings. Unique among Canadian provincial parks, it safeguards over 1,000 carved cliffs, powerful symbols of clan systems, responsibility to one another, and the deep connection between women, the earth, water, and the moon. Kinomague is evidence of our Anishinaabe history, spiritual and cultural experiences. Curve Lake First Nation seeks to reclaim full stewardship of Kinomague, ensuring the protection and preservation of these invaluable heritage sites by restoring Indigenous leadership over the park. Curve Lake has enhanced the safeguarding of sacred spaces and strength of cultural education for future generations. Now, the next steps that we are looking at is basically the Anishinaabe Nation will support engagement and dialogue by facilitating a meeting between Anishinaabe Nation, the Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks, and Curve Lake First Nation to discuss an Indigenous-led model for managing Kinomague Wapkong, in addition to supporting other Anishinaabe nations and their provincial park endeavors, such as the Whitefish River and Killarney Provincial Parks. 2, the Lands and Resources Department to support research and planning. The department will gather resources on conservation plans to support Curve Lake First Nation in developing a comprehensive stewardship strategy. Curve Lake First Nation and other interested Anishinaabe First Nations to collaborate with the Economic Development Team to explore tourism opportunities, drawing insights from Beausoleil First Nations management and Springwater Provincial Parks. So these are some of the things and examples that has taken place. The Anishinaabe Nation gave Curve Lake by resolution many, many years ago as stewards of the Petroglyphs Provincial Park. We just want to make sure it is managed properly and try and go into some other type of agreement, whether it's co-management and someday take over that provincial park. We are to protect our history, our ancestry. Today, I'm asking for your support to help protect our ancestors of the past, and the markings and the trails that they left for us to review and look at and read. I believe that that support I'm looking for very, very deep-heartedly, as we need to protect our past and recognize all of those ones before us. And as you walk and notice all the petroglyphs or pictoglyphs also, they're usually by the waterway. That was our text many years ago. More recently, Rogers wanted to put up one of their big towers on the outside of the gate to the petroglyphs. We put a stop to that. We met with them in Curve Lake, made them aware that that was no place to put such a tower. There are too many spirits within that particular area. We made that aware of. They have found a different location now for that tower. So we were very proud that we were able to take that part and not disrupt the spirits that are within that particular area. Miigwech.
Whitefish River Chief Rodney Nawagabo seconded the resolution.
I think what's critical for us is that we don't forsake the things that were given to us to protect. And so I think these teaching rocks that are being spoken of here is the very same thing that I'm speaking about here on our territory, which is our Bell Rocks. We have sacred objects called Bell Rocks. Bell Rocks is situated on Lacoche Island, which is our territory, which was our original villages of Whitefish River. And those sacred items were used to communicate to other tribes on the North Shore on Manitoulin Island. They used to sing those rocks. The rocks were moved to build the road, and they stopped singing. They still make a small sound, and it hurts me to know that if we don't take the precautions in this modern time, that we're going to slowly start losing these things. And these teachings rocks are very important. And because I'm now in the position of responsibility, it wouldn't be right for me to neglect supporting this resolution. So I just want to say that it's very important for us to do that. And with that, I proudly second this resolution. Chumigwacha, Kiniguya.
I asked Chief Knott why the province of Ontario had taken over the site in the first place. Had they consulted with Curve Lake First Nation beforehand? Did the community have a position back then? Chief Knott was diplomatic in his answer. At the time, did the community members want the provincial government to take control of that site?
Well, we weren't involved with it at all until maybe late 80s or early 90s that we really were notified and were knowledgeable of the cliffs themselves. But prior to that time, I couldn't say.
To me, it doesn't seem right that the provincial government took over that site when we feel it was a sacred site.
Well, it is on Crown land. And we also look at it where there's Crown land, it's either federal or provincial. And I would imagine that with such an interesting site that is there, I'd imagine the provincial government figured it might be a revenue generating situation. That's my thought. And what other way is it than to put it into the recognition of a provincial park? Same way as Serpent Mounds down in Hiawatha. That was a provincial park too at one time, until that community decided to take it back. And it's so connected, so closely connected to their community that it's much easier. But you have this further away from this community. We know how hard it is to go through the ATR process. How would we go through that process for that?
The additions to reserve process? If we feel it was a sacred site, then it's hard to see how a sacred site would be turned into kind of a tourism or revenue generating destination.
Well, that's what it is, yeah. Well, that's a provincial way of doing it. This is why even that resolution is why we want to try and get into management or take over, I think. So it's no longer a tourist attraction. But there we gotta understand where would we get the resources to continue the operation and maintenance of that particular area, the improvement of the system that is there. Is there a new type of structure that would be more beneficial or helpful to keep the carvings so that it doesn't disintegrate of non-existing? Is there another system that can be used in order to keep the temperature regulated to a certain degree?
There's lots of really practical implications.
There's a lot of practical things to look at also. Yes, it's nice to say, okay, we'll take it over. But we also got to look at how we're going to manage it after. We want it. Yes, we want it. But there's other things you have to look at also. It'll be a new process, and a new structure has to be put in place on how you're going to deliver what is needed over there. It's good to take over, but what is needed? Where are the resources coming from in order to do that?
Are there other successful models then of this kind of First Nations management of a site like that?
Not so much a site like that, but understand Beausoleil has some kind of an agreement with the provincial government, with a provincial park of some kind around that area.
Springwater Provincial Park is located near Barrie within the traditional territory of the Beausoleil First Nation. To gain control over the park, Beausoleil worked with a consulting firm to do the preliminary research and create a business plan for management and operation of the park, which they used to negotiate a co-management agreement with the province of Ontario. Beausoleil First Nation has been operating Springwater Provincial Park since 2015. As mentioned, the Serpent Mounds Park at Hiawatha First Nation, 50 kilometers south of Curve Lake, was designated by Ontario as a provincial park starting in 1955. In 1995, the lease was not renewed, and Hiawatha First Nation took over management of the park that year. It closed in 2009 due to the decline in the tourism market and failing infrastructure. Hiawatha First Nation is planning to reopen Serpent Mounds Park as an Indigenous cultural heritage tourism and education site. The goal is to protect the sacred burial mounds, increase respect for Indigenous culture, burial grounds, and sacred sites, and support Hiawatha First Nations community economic development. As for the resolution passed at the Anishinaabeg Nation Grand Council Assembly this July, it notes that funding will be required to develop a park management model and that resources will be required for both management and site preservation. You mentioned there's also a committee here at
Yes.
Curve Lake.
Yeah.
So what kind of things is the Kinomage Wapkong committee doing?
Well, they are the ones that are mostly involved with the discussions that take place. They talk to M&R. They do the discussion, and that's where the resolution that we took in June came from that committee. It came from the committee to council for council's maybe discussion and also approval to move forward on that. That committee is a committee of council, so it comes here first before it'll go somewhere else. And it's the same thing after we seen it go and went back again to the committee to further review and that before it went to the assembly. And we also talked with the Grand Council chief when she visited our community, our council meeting, made her aware of that and all that, so next steps will be see where we want to keep in mind that resolution that was passed at the assembly. The committee, where do they want to go from here with it? That'll be the next question. I can't tell you today where it goes from here, but until they meet and discuss that resolution, we know that answer.
In the resolution, they mention also the need to have the adequate resources as well.
And that's why I think some of the part of involvement or request to be part of this, the Anishinaabe Nation, to assist maybe to find resources in order for the O&M of the site, if we are successful in full management, other than having to be it as a tourist attraction.
What do you mean?
Well, that's what it is today, is a tourist attraction. So if we can look at some other place where there's a cultural available resources for operation and maintenance of these type of things, could we have the Anishinaabe Nation help facilitate or help develop proposals or something like that to request those type of resources? Or what would the Anishinaabe Nation propose we could do? It's not only Curve Lake in this now. The Anishinaabe Nation is part of it. We are there to look after what they want us to do. And if management of it is that, these are the things we got.
The resolution also mentions Curve Lake wanting to have authority over how the park is promoted to ensure a healthy atmosphere around the site and deliver sacred teachings in a good way. Right now, are there those opportunities to hear teachings or take part in ceremony on the site?
There's ceremonies take place on the site. We can have ceremonies there year round as far as that goes. We can go in there with a key to unlock the gate and go and have a ceremony in there. But the request comes here that they would like to have a ceremony there, the elder or something like that. The request is granted most times. We don't have to go to M&R to get
The
that.
MNR has to respect
Yeah. After the park is closed for the season, there's a closing ceremony that takes place. The Grand Council chief will be here when the closing ceremony takes place. We have elders come from all over, sometimes go to the site and have a ceremony of some kind. And these ceremonies take place whenever is necessary and whenever is requested. And these are some of the things that I think needs to be continued and needs to be acknowledged. When you look around you, you see all what is happening today compared to years ago. Look how much they have taken away from us since colonialism. We weren't allowed to speak our language. And the school next door was a day school. We weren't allowed to speak our language within this particular area. Our ceremonies, we weren't allowed to do those anymore. If we'd done it, it had to be secretly somewhere where it couldn't be noticed. We could not do many of our traditional things, hunting, fishing, gathering. We always had to do that with one eye open and one ear listening to see if anybody's sneaking up on you. Now this, we are gradually getting all of those things back and recognized. And this is all part of that. Let our message be heard. Hear the importance of the first peoples, our ancestors, the teachings that we have before colonialism. You never heard of welfare. You never heard of these social programs. We had a clan system that dealt with each one of these things. These are many things, and most of that, in fact, all is gradually coming back to us. Our language is being taught in schools now. And this is all part of that, bringing these things back to us. And so that we can do it openly. And this is what happened to us before. They took all that away from us. We couldn't exercise our language, our culture, our spiritualities, our traditions without paying a price of some kind. Now that is coming back. And this is all part of that.
Well, Miigwech, for sitting down and kind of explaining this context.
Well, I've done the best I could on the knowledge that I have. Hopefully it was helpful.
Very helpful. So much knowledge. Yeah, well, Miigwech.
Miigwech kaki, pamapi.
As part of the seasonal closing ceremonies of Petroglyphs Provincial Park, Curve Lake First Nation and the Anishinaabeg Nation collaborated to offer a sacred teachings gathering at the Kinomaage Wapkong, open to community elders, knowledge keepers, leadership, and policy staff. The October 2025 gathering was a precursor to future policy discussions that will focus on developing a conservation and awareness promotion strategy and discussions with the Ontario government regarding management of the park. Starting with the sunrise ceremony, the day featured stories, teachings, and sharing of perspectives about the Kinomaage Wapkong. A lot of questions remain to be discussed as the process moves forward. Is the current facility presenting the significance of the petroglyphs in a meaningful way? And are visitors engaging with the petroglyphs in a respectful way? Are there enough opportunities for the sharing of traditional knowledge and teachings about the petroglyphs within our Anishinaabe community? Does the current arrangement allow the necessary privacy for ceremonies on the site? Should tourism access to the petroglyphs be reduced to preserve them from further wear and tear and protect them from having photos or images of them being used for profit? While the building sheltering the petroglyphs has helped protect the site from vandalism and erosion by the elements, should it be redesigned to ensure that the petroglyphs have more exposure to the natural environment? Curve Lake Council and their Kinomaage Wapkong Committee continue to collaborate with the Anishinaabeg Nation's Lands and Resources Department to negotiate with Ontario's Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks to move forward on a co-management plan for Kinomaage Wapkong. Chimigwech to former Chief Keith Knott for taking part in the podcast, and to the Anishinaabeg Nation Lands and Resources and Economic Department, and Kirk Titmus of the Anishinaabeg Nation Governance Department for supporting this episode. To learn more about the petroglyphs, find the links in the podcast description. This episode includes the tracks Mino Pamatsuin by Nigel Irwin and Chippewa Travelers, Animjawan by Daniel Monkman, Those Who Came Before by Mike Byrne, Down in the Valley by Graham Jones, Thoughts Will Wander and Star Shower by Justin Delorme, provided by Nagamo Publishing, and The Grand Entry Song by Medicine Lodge Singers. Chimigwech for listening to Bamadza Jake Ganonintwa. Until next time, Bama P.